Let us put on the armor of light. You may be seated. This is always a very special day to me. I love to preach, except for the last hour and a half, and I've thought, what am I doing this for? And could someone else be me for just a few minutes today? But I love the Word of God. I love to preach, but this is a special day to me because 41 years ago today, I gave my heart to Jesus. I surrendered my life to Him and made Him Lord and have served Him from that day to this. So this is my spiritual birthday, and I am so grateful for who God is in my life, and thankful for what He's done in my life and who I was, but more than that, who I am now and the change that He made, because I ain't the same. Not the person I was, and that is all because of Jesus, and I'm grateful for that. Over the last several weeks, if you've been here and part of Lighthouse, you've heard your pastor speaking and preaching about this crazy upside-down world that we live in. It's a crazy place out there, and darkness seems prevalent, and it's a place where black is white, and white is black, and wrong is right, and right is wrong. Right is controversial. Right is very much deemed as hate by many people, and it is a crazy world. Let me tell you about darkness for a moment. Last year in 2017, 91 people died in our county as a result of drug overdose. Last year in May, at this time last year, 44 babies, and I couldn't find statistics for it today, but 44 babies in our Reed Hospital and Health Facility had been born addicted last year from January to May. 42% of children ages 10 to 17 view pornography today. 42% of our babies will no doubt grow up with sexual addictions. I read a statistic out of big cities, 400,000 or more. Indianapolis, 250 people OD'd. Dayton, 270 people OD'd in a 1-year period. And where is Richmond, Indiana? We're right in the middle of the mess. I hope we don't have to prove to you any longer that we are living in dark times. We are living in dark times. And what I want to say to you is today it is high time that we awake out of darkness, that we wake up to the place that we're at. Sometimes I kind of blink and I feel like I've been asleep, and all at once I wake up and we're in this mess. And as a nana of 10, my heart is broken to think that we've allowed the world to become the mess that it is, that my grandchildren will have to be raised in the mess, in the darkness. That's a bit overwhelming to me at times. But according to this verse that I read in Romans, it's not a surprise. It's not a surprise to God. God knew that life would look like this, and He tells us that it is high time that we awake in the middle of this darkness and that we become the armor of light that our county and that our community and that our family and that our friends need. Just a moment ago, we sang this song, Pushing Back the Darkness. God is fighting for us. He is pushing back the darkness, but He will only push darkness back if we decide to be the light. If we refuse to be the light, there is no point in moving darkness. If there's not going to be a light that stands up, there's no point in pushing back the darkness. So, it is high time to awake out of darkness. Well, how do we do that, Kathy? How do we awake out of darkness? Now, I can tell you this morning, I'm going to jump all over in the Word of God. I'm going to share some stories, and what I would like you to do is just take your sermon notes there in your bulletin, and that you would just jot down references, and that later on you would study them in depth, because I don't have time to read all of the stories I want to read this morning. Pastor said there would be Mother's Day lunch, and I'm all up for that. So, jot down the references, look at them later, and let's learn how to arise, to wake out of darkness. Number one, if you want to wake up, I want to challenge you to try again. Try again? Yes. I am sure that most of us in this room have had some sort of relationship with Jesus. I'm sure that there has been a time that we've been on fire for God, that we recognize what life in Jesus is about, a time when we've been on, a time when we've been hearing from God, and we've been serving Him. But maybe this morning you're feeling a little defeated. Maybe you're feeling a little distraught. Maybe today you are feeling like, what's the use? I did that before, and I'm not sure I want to go there again. Can I challenge you? We need you to awake out of darkness, and some of you need to try again. Maybe you're here today and things didn't happen the way you thought they would. God didn't answer. God didn't show up in the way you thought He would show up. Can I challenge you? I understand discouragement, but will you try again? You see, a few months ago, I was very disappointed in the Father. I had a very dear friend who had served Jesus all his life, most of his life, and he was a hard-working man of God. He developed cancer, and I was okay with that because I know the healer. And I thought, God, you can just raise him up. You gave him cancer so that he would go ahead and retire, and I had it all worked out. So he retired. Once he was retired, Father, heal him so that he and his beautiful wife could enjoy days of retirement together. Somehow, he passed away. That was very discouraging to me and very disappointing to me because I wanted God to do it my way. And then, I get to try again. I get to pray another prayer, but I don't want to. Because the last prayer I prayed, God, the last thing I was earnest about, I didn't get the way I wanted to. I want to challenge you to know that you have to try again. Joshua 6 tells us the story of the defeat of Jericho. You might remember that story. God is leading his people to the promised land, and they come to Jericho, and it's a mighty city surrounded by walls. And God gives them instruction, and he says, march around the walls, and at this point, the walls will fall, and you can take Jericho. You will win Jericho. But take nothing from the city, because it's the first city, and it will be my tithe. So take nothing, remove nothing, but you will win Jericho. So the men of Israel do exactly as they're told to do. They follow instruction to the T, except for one man named Achan. And he gets in the middle of the city, and he sees some things that he thinks he'd like to have. What is a few pieces of silver and a little bit of gold? And one Babylonian garment. Not a big deal. No one will even notice. So he takes those things and moves on his way. Well, after Jericho, the next city to be conquered is the small little town of Ai. It's so small that it only has 2 letters in its name, Ai. How simple is that? And the Israelites get ready to take over Ai. And they know, we'll be great at this. We just conquered Jericho. Ai will be a piece of cake. And so they launch out for the battle at Ai. In fact, Ai is so insignificant, they're going to take a small part of the army. We're only going to take 2,000 to 3,000 men, and we're going to fight the battle at Ai, and we will be victorious. The battle didn't go quite as planned. At the end of the day, Israel had lost. What? Our strapping army lost? God reveals to Joshua that there's a cursed thing in your camp. And as Joshua begins to work through that situation, he finds out that Achan had stolen those items. And Achan and his clan, entire clan, lost their lives. They were stoned to death as a result of him stealing that gold, that silver, and that fine Babylonian garment that he thought, Achan, he thought he must deserve it, or he really needed it. He had a good excuse for taking it, I'm sure, but it cost the army of Israel lives because of what he wanted. Your way will always cost you more than you want to pay. A few weeks ago, Pastor preached that awesome message. Your children will be the collateral damage of you making your choice against God. Think about that with me for a moment. All of Achan's descendants lost their lives because of what he chose to keep. Well, as the story goes on, in Joshua chapter 8, verses 1 and 2, then the Lord said to Joshua, do not be afraid, do not be discouraged. Take the whole army with you and go up and attack Ai. For I have delivered into your hands the king of Ai, his people, his city, and his land. You shall do to Ai and its king as you did to Jericho and its king, except that you may carry off their plunder and livestock for yourself. Set an ambush behind the city. Now, let's get real for just a moment. Think about these men, this army. God says, yes, they just defeated you, but now try again. What? I don't want to try again. I just lost 3 brothers in that war. I just saw my best friend killed in that war. I know what you're saying, God. I know you want me to try again, but I don't think I can do it. I don't think I can try again, Jesus. What if someone else stole something that I don't know about? What if there's still a curse on us? I don't want to try again. Trying again is not an easy thing. You know, I remember Zach being a football player at Northeastern. And back in the day, their team was rated most losing team in the nation. They had lost more, been defeated more than anyone in the nation. And you might laugh now, but at that time, as a parent of a football player, that was grueling. I can remember going to a Union City game and sitting in the bleachers and watching that Union City team rack up points against us. I think that the ending score was something like 68-3. It was ridiculous. The Union City coach, he had no mercy whatsoever. He did not put in second string. He did not play less hard. It was grueling. And I remember watching those players tuck tail, get on the bus with their heads held low, and they recognize we are losers. We have not done a good thing here. That was bad enough, but I remember the next year, and I remember saying to my husband, this is the Union City game. Do we have to go? Do we have to try again? They killed us last year. Do we have to go through that again? Trying again. Not something that we look forward to. Many of you know that Pastor and I, let me slip back to Ai for just a moment. What they felt going into that battle was no doubt 1,000 times worse than what we felt going to that Union City game, right? This is life and death that they were talking about. But they did try again. And as a result, God did show up, and they did defeat Ai, and they did get to bring home the plunder. And when God tells you to try again, I challenge you, try again. It will be worth it. As you know, Pastor and I, between Zach and Josh, we had a 1.5 year bout with infertility. It was very difficult. I remember those days hurting and feeling like, God, please, I want another baby. I don't want to raise an only child. I had a desire to have more children, and it did not happen. And I remember month after month being so disappointed, and doctors saying, there's no explanation. We don't understand it. We don't know what else to tell you. You've done all you can do, and we've done all we know to do. And I remember how painful that was. I remember Laura and Laurelyn Cooper going through the same scenario. Laura came to Lighthouse as an independent woman. She had no desire to ever have a husband, and she did not like kids at all. I remember when she fell in love with Jesus, and it was a short time after that she fell in love with Laurelyn, and then a short time after that she wanted to have a baby. God can do amazing things when you surrender your heart to him. And he rocked that girl's world. He turned her around. And I remember Laura and Laurelyn having such great difficulty conceiving a child. I remember the day when Laura said to me, I quit. I don't want to try again. This is too painful. Month after month and procedure after procedure. This is just too hard for me. Then I remember a day, it was a Christmas Sunday, that Laurelyn and Laura said, can we talk to you for just a minute? And they pulled us into the office and we sat down and they made an announcement, we're pregnant. Oh, it was a day of great rejoicing. It was an awesome day. And that precious baby boy, Charleston, came. And 16 months later, they had a precious Alexandra. And God has been so faithful. When I asked Laura for permission to share the story today, she responded, of course, you can share my story. She said, I remember having lunch with you, and I was irritated with God after the whole in vitro thing. And you said to me, God is setting you up to be a testimony after this test. She said, after the first successful pregnancy, I felt so blessed that he did use me. Not my timing, but his. And to put icing on the cake, he gave me a second one right behind the first. Barbie, will you take Laura a flower? I just want to say thank you, Laura, for an awesome testimony of trying again. She surprised me being in the sanctuary this morning. She was supposed to be in the forest, which she absolutely loves. The girl who did not like kids works in the forest on a regular basis with our little 3-4-year-olds, and she does a great job with that. As you know, Pastor and I did try again, and we received Josh, our special child. He's a delight in so many ways. And then 12 months and 3 weeks later, we had Keela. Can I challenge you this morning to try again? Pray another prayer. Pay another tithe. Read your Bible one more time. Forgive your husband once again. Try again. Try again. Ask for healing once again. God has a plan, and our timing is not his timing. You know, our Josh was born on the perfect day, at the perfect moment, exactly when he needed to be born. If you want to awake from darkness, I challenge you to try again. Secondly, be an example. You want to awake from darkness, make a choice to be an example. 2 Timothy chapter 1 and verse 5 says, I am reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, and I am persuaded now lives in you also. As a result of a grandma, a nana, who lived the faith, a mama who lived the faith, young Timothy came to Christ, knew him as Lord and Savior, became a best friend of Paul, mentioned over and over in the Word of God. But ladies, can I tell you, Mom, can I tell you, no one can replace your example in the life of your children. Mom, your kids can have amazing role models in their life, but their mom, their grandma needs to be an example. I challenge you, if you want to awake out of darkness, I challenge you to be an example. There are hundreds of stories in this room that I could share this morning, but I have chosen 3 that God just kind of brought to my memory quickly that I want to share with you. An amazing example. The first one I want to mention to you is Robin Shope. Robin is an amazing example. She is Gammy to 4 of my grandbabies, Ellis, Eliana, Avon, and Adelie. And those kids won't recognize it right now. But there is a day that they will look back and they will see the amazing example that Gammy was in their lives. You see, when Robin started attending Lighthouse over 20 years ago, she came here as a single mom spiritually. Sherman didn't serve Jesus, and Robin was faithful. She came here. She had determination. She had dedication. And she had a drive to be in the house of the Lord, to raise her boys without a husband beside her, to raise her boys to know Jesus and to serve him. I remember for years watching a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 16-year-old boy lay in an altar, sometimes the last one that we pulled out to say, we have to go, we need to lock the building now. But he would lay in the altars, Dylan would, and he would pray and grieve over his father, who he wanted to come to Christ so desperately. I remember throughout the years that Sherman would show up on occasion, maybe an Easter drama or a time that we were having food after a Sunday morning service. He might come in and, no, not you, Sherm. He might show up, and he was here every now and then. I remember talking to him a time or two and trying to push him into the kingdom, and I wanted to see him surrender his heart to Christ. And occasionally I would write him a letter or send him a card. But Robin never gave up. I remember seeing her baptized one Sunday, and she said, I'm being baptized today because I am going to do everything I can in obedience to my Father, because I want my husband to come to Christ. I remember the dedication of this building, 2004. Sherman showed up that day. It was a powerful day, and there was a powerful altar call. And I remember seeing Dylan in the altar, and I looked at him and I said, where's your dad? And he kind of gave me this head nod, and I looked, and he was sitting somewhere over there in the area where the Pearsons are sitting, and I thought, you know what? I don't want to see that man walk out of this building one more time dead to sin. And I went to Sherman in his seat, and I said, Sherman, would you pray just like right here and accept Jesus as your personal Savior? And I remember him praying that prayer. I remember that day he gave his heart to Jesus. I remember that day his life was turned around, and he has been faithful to the house of God ever since. You see, Robin was determined. She remained dedicated. She was an example of a person with drive to see something happen in the kingdom. Our Gammy last year faced cancer, and with that same determination, dedication, and drive, she faced it head on. Not what she wanted, not what she wanted it to look like, but she remained faithful. She remained in the house of God. She remained strong. She remained in service. What an awesome example that you have been to us, Robin. I am so glad. Of all the women in the world I get to share my grandbabies with, I am so grateful that it is you. Keela, will you give Robin, our Gammy, a flower this morning? Mm-hmm. Another example I want to talk about today, Angie Shirley. She is in her cancer battle right now. Again, not what she wanted life to look like right now. Not what she picked. But can I tell you, the only tears I have seen Angie Shirley shed are tears over not being able to serve at this moment the way she wants to serve. She has said to me time and time again, it is so hard to sit back and not help. What an awesome example. What a woman who is so determined. She will come through this battle, and she is doing amazing things. And God does have a plan, and her testimony will be resounding. You know, sometimes I look around and I think, okay, what an awesome example of service. But then we have someone else who doesn't serve, who doesn't use that example. I want to challenge you. Will you become, in these dark days, would you become an example of service to the kingdom? Angie Shirley, I am so proud of you. I am so proud of you. Kristen, will you give Angie a flower this morning? I have a third example. Miss Mary Mack. Miss Mary, 95 years young. Mary McPherson is an amazing example of faithfulness. Mary has been here 95 years. She is faithful to Sunday school at 9:30 on Sunday mornings. Now, I don't know about you, but I would think when you reach 90, it would be okay to sleep in till 10:30 on Sunday morning. I would just think that, but not Mary Mack. Nope, she's going to be here at 9:30 every Sunday morning. She has heard the word for a lot of years, and she is here every Sunday. 2 weeks ago, she didn't get to be here. It was staff pastor appreciation, and her ride was sick, so she didn't get to be here. Last Sunday, she marched into my office, and she said, Kathy, I didn't get to be here for staff pastor appreciation last week. My ride was sick. But I went out, and I did it before last Sunday. I went out, and I got 2 cards. I picked them out, and they are perfect cards. And I want you to make sure that you get this card to Pastor Josh and this card to Pastor Dylan and Keela for their staff pastor's appreciation. What an awesome example of faithfulness. Pastor, will you give Miss Mary a flower this morning? Mary, thank you for being such a great example of faithfulness. You bless my heart. I often think if when I am 95, I can wear blue jeans and sprint around this place the way Mary Mack does, I will consider my life very blessed. Now, I said a moment ago, Mom, there is no one that can replace you as an example in your kid's life. But I want you to be the right kind of example. Listen to what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 23, verses 1 through 3. Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, the teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. In other words, they're people of authority. So you must be careful to do everything they tell you. Listen to this. But do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach. Do everything they tell you, but do not do what they do. You see, their names would be Sister Pointy Finger and Betty Bible Thumper. They know it. They know what the word says. They know what it says, but they don't do what it says for them to do. They don't obey it. They only repeat it. Can I promise you that's dangerous ground? I'm going to meddle for just a moment. I'm going to get in your business for just a second here. Pastor talked on Wednesday night about alcohol use. I want to talk about the use of alcohol for a moment. Will one glass of wine send you to hell? Maybe not. But what about that teenager who watches you purchase that one bottle of wine. They have no idea that one bottle is going to last you a year. They think you're going to use that bottle the same way they use it. That you're going to take that bottle, and on Friday night and on Saturday night, you're going to get hammered just like they do. They're going to use your excuse. And when they are killed on the side of a country road on a Saturday morning at 2:30, it's your excuse that said, your example that said, this is okay, it won't hurt you. You live with a man you're not married to, and you tell your kids to remain pure. You know the word. You want them to listen, but not do what you do. You show your husband no respect. You treat him with an attitude that's less than acceptable, and you want your kids to honor him and do what he says. I challenge you, be an example. Let your life be an example. Let your actions be an example. Do what the word says. I'll stop meddling now. Y'all got way too quiet there. I will say, Sylvester, you'll appreciate this. I will use Martha Tennyson's line. She says, no one talks during surgery. Is that the truth? Nope. No one talks. I want you to awake out of darkness. I want you to try again. I want you to be an example. And thirdly, I want you to go a little deeper. We sing that song all the time. I want to shout a little louder. I want to jump a little higher. I want to love a little deeper. Well, here's my question. Really? You see, God believes what comes out of our mouths. He expects us not to lie, and we don't sing it just because it's on the screen, but we sing it because it's what's in our heart and what we want to see happen. Are you really ready to go a little deeper? In this dark and crazy world that we live in, if our amount of light was enough to change the world would be changed, but it is not. In fact, I want to challenge you that if you walk with the amount of light that you have right now, and you determine that you don't need to go deeper, you will be in darkness soon. There's no way to maintain where we're at. We have to either go deeper or we lose the place that we're at. The mighty move of God that we had last Sunday and the way that He came and kissed our sweet spirits and the awesome touch that we had, what an incredible time that was. And as I panned the audience and saw some people so hungry to be involved in that spirit and coming to the altar and just finding themselves in a place of worship and surrender to Christ, and other people who had been there before, but they had a ho-hum syndrome kind of touch them, and they just wondered how much longer before I can get to lunch, and they weren't really impressed with that. You see, what happens is if you try to stay the same, you begin to ride the tide. And before you know it, the tide will take you out to a place that you thought would be okay, and it's not really that big of a deal till you get there. And then you realize you can no longer touch. There's no more grounding in your life. And before you know it, you're in the middle of a riptide that's taking you to a place you never dreamed you would go. And then you wake up and maybe you go, I want to be back there, but you're so far out that you can't imagine how to get back. Dangerous place. I want to challenge you today to go a little deeper. And maybe you say to me, well, how do I do that? How do I go deeper? What does that mean? Well, I want to challenge you to build an imposing altar. What? An imposing altar? What is that? What are you talking about? Joshua chapter 22, there's this amazing story that I've probably read over 30 times in my life. But this year, as I was doing my daily Bible devotion, early in March, this chapter came alive to me. And I began to read it. And we find the Israelites, they've conquered the land. They now have the promised land. And Joshua is setting them up where their tribes need to be, where they're going to land. Where's a home going to be for us now? And he comes to this group, to the tribe of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. And he assigns them to the land that Moses had promised them on the other side of the Jordan. And he commends them, and he says, you've obeyed the words of Moses. You obeyed every order that I've given you. You haven't deserted the other tribes. And you've been careful to obey the Lord your God right up to this present day. In other words, you're doing a great job, guys. Joshua 22, verse 10. But while they were still in Canaan, and when they came to the place called Galiloth, near the Jordan River, the men of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh stopped to build a large and imposing altar. A large and imposing altar. I wonder what that looked like. I wonder what that was about. I would think that everybody would be excited. They're building an altar. That has to be a good thing, right? But it's not what happened. In fact, civil war almost broke out. The 9.5 tribes are so angry, and they come with their accusations. In verse 16, they say, this whole community wants to know, why are you betraying the God of Israel? In other words, who do you think you are putting this big altar over here in your land? That wasn't the plan of those 2.5 tribes. This became real life to me a few weeks ago. We were at Outpouring service on a Friday night. I was excited to be at Outpouring. Keela was going to preach, and I always want to hear what she has to say and what things she's going to have us to do that might be a little out of comfort. And so I was excited to be here, and I was in worship, and things were going great. If you haven't been here in an Outpouring service, or if you have, you might notice that Pastor, during Outpouring, he worships on the floor. He doesn't come up here to a seat. He gets down here, and that's where his worship station is on Friday night outpourings. So he was down there, and he was starting to get his praise on, and he was worshiping, and it was fine. And then he started to get kind of in my area. And I was kind of like, okay, I'll just move around here a little bit. And then I noticed he started clapping louder than any human needs to ever clap. I mean, his clapping was resonating. And then he started with his, come on, Jesus. Come on, Jesus. And I thought, Jesus will come on when Jesus wants to come on. And could you just be quiet? And about that moment, God smacked me in the face and said, an imposing altar. What? Why would anyone else's worship get on my nerves? Why would that bother me? Is it because they've stepped out of a place of comfort? Is it because they've gone somewhere deeper than I'm willing to go at this moment? Is it because they're doing something in my face that I'm not willing to do? An imposing altar. That's the same thing the 9.5 tribes were dealing with. What? Our altar isn't good enough for you? You need your own? If Jesus is being worshiped, why do I care? Just let Jesus be praised. But this 9.5 had that thing rise up in them, the same as I did that day. Chapter 22, verse 26 says, so we decided to build an altar, not for burnt offerings or sacrifices, but as a memorial. It will remind our descendants and your descendants that we too have the right to worship the Lord at his sanctuary with our burnt offerings, sacrifices, and peace offerings. Then your descendants will not be able to say to ours, you have no claim to the Lord. Your kids need to know that you're willing to build an imposing altar. Your kids need to know that you are going deeper with Jesus than you've ever gone before. Pastor shared a story 2 weeks ago. I want to repeat it today. I want to remind you of something. I had went to Terre Haute for the regional encounter and had a great time over there with Sister Karen Taylor, and mighty move of God, and everything was awesome and it done great and great word and all of that. Worship was amazing. All of it was incredible. As the service went on and altar time finished and most ladies were leaving and things were quieting down, a pastor's wife brought a grandma to me. She was obviously a grandma. She was Aunt B. She was like this tall, and she was the same wide, and she had cute little white hair, and she was precious. This grandma, her heart was broken. And I said, "What can I pray with you about?" And she said, "This last week, my granddaughter has tried to commit suicide 2 times. My heart is broken." She said to me, she's stolen her parents' credit cards, including her dad's business card. And she has racked up thousands and thousands of dollars in debt on pornography. My heart was broken. For some reason, I asked, "How old is your granddaughter?" She said, 12. My heart was grieved. I have a 10-year-old grandson. I have a 9-year-old granddaughter. I could not imagine my grandkids in that trap. As I continued to speak with her, I realized the church that she was from. It was a church that my husband's mother's family helped start. A few years ago, Pastor and I were at that church, and he was preaching their 75th church anniversary. She said to me, "Yeah, my son and his wife were there when your husband preached. They were on fire for Jesus then. But they've backslidden. They've lost their way." In preparing this message, I couldn't help but think, if they could pull themselves out of the darkness for just a few moments, I'm pretty sure they would give anything to be able to build an imposing altar. I'm pretty sure today, if we could say and we could turn back time, we would say to that couple, wouldn't an imposing altar have been better than walking away from the place you were in Jesus and knowing that your precious 12-year-old baby is in an institution today because she wants to die, because she's so addicted to sex and the mess of this world? The darkness has become so dark to her that she no longer wants to live through it. I'm pretty sure an imposing altar would be a much better choice. Parents, I challenge you. Your home needs an imposing altar. Your workplace needs an imposing altar. Maybe that's a Bible laying on your desk, just something there that steadies you to remind you. Maybe it's a plaque on your wall at work, something there to remind you, wait a minute, He is my God. He is my God. I don't know what that imposing altar needs to look like in your life, but I can tell you, we have to have a reminder on a regular basis of who He is. You know, maybe I created an imposing altar for you last Sunday night when we sang 975 times, this is how I fight my battles. I'm surrounded by you. But if that gets on your nerves, that's on you. You have to ask yourself, why is that bothering me? What is it in me that is just not so surrendered to him? I don't even care. I don't even care what it looks like, Jesus. I no longer care what it sounds like. I don't care whose way it's in. I don't care who looks at it and goes, what are you thinking? None of that matters to me. I want to serve you with all that I have, Jesus. I love this in Joshua chapter 22, verse 34. The word says, the people of Reuben and Gad named the altar Witness, for they said, it is a witness between us and them that the Lord is our God too. Can I get a witness in this house today? Do you need a witness in your life that says, he is my God? He is my God. You know, when you walk into a dark room, in a little while, your eyes will adjust. There will be a point that you begin to see, even though the darkness is there. We would go crazy because at Grandma Rose's, she would always have the lights off. She'd be in the kitchen cooking, no lights on. Occasionally we could taste that she had no lights on and maybe substituted salt for sugar or something like that. No lights on. You know, today I'm concerned that some of us sit here and we've adjusted to the darkness. It no longer bothers us. It's the enemy's strategy. One more overdose, not really that big of a deal. One more riot on the news. One more police officer killed. One more rise of the gay agenda. It's just what life is. We have no desire for light. When our hearts don't break over the pain that is in this world, our bus kids who have no hope without us. If you could watch that Pastor Josh video, him receiving that award, and God's amazing blessing on us as Lighthouse, and that doesn't bring a tear to your eye, doesn't cause something to rise up in you, I'm afraid you're in the dark and you've adjusted. I challenge you this morning, it's time that we wake up. It's time that we wake up out of darkness. Pastor Dylan, whoever, can I have some music, please? Maybe today, like Laura, you need to create an imposing altar of try again. Maybe that's what your altar needs to look like. I am just going to try again. Maybe like Robin, you need an imposing altar of determination that says, God, I am going to be faithful to you to see this thing through till my husband comes to Christ, till that boy surrenders his life, whatever that is. Maybe you need an imposing altar like Miss Angie Shirley, an altar of service to God, service to his plans. Maybe this morning you need an imposing altar of going deeper. God, I'm beginning to adjust to the darkness, and I recognize my need to go deeper in you than I've ever been before. I'm going to ask that you not leave. We have gifts for all daughters. That means every woman in the house. We have some very special gifts for you today. Very excited about that. That's going to happen right after the next few moments. But I'm going to ask that all of you bow your heads and you close your eyes. And I'm going to ask that you allow God to shine his light in your heart this morning. God, if I have adjusted to the darkness, Father, if I am sitting in a place that darkness has taken over, will you wake me to that right now and at this moment? Maybe you're here this morning and you say, to be quite honest, Kathy, there have been some things happen that have hurt my heart, and I recognize that I need to try again. I haven't been my best. I haven't done it right. And I really today, I need to try again. If that's you this morning, will you raise your hand? Many of you. Yeah. Thank you. Maybe you're sitting here today and you say, yeah, I've allowed darkness to come in and I am not the example that I need to be. If my kids followed me, if my kids lived the last 6 months the way I have lived them, I am pretty sure we'll all be in a whole lot of trouble. If you would say this morning, I need to be a better example. I know that I need to be a better example. If you would raise your hand this morning. You know, thank you. What is so ridiculous is that God does not need you to raise your hand. He knows your heart. He knows who you are. You need you to raise your hand, because that's the moment your pride falls. That's the moment you break. When you admit who you are and where you're living. Thirdly, if you're here this morning and you would say, I know I've got to go deeper. There's no question in my mind. I have got to go deeper. I'm not who I should be. If I stay right here, it won't be long. And maybe you need prayer just to have the hunger to go deeper. If that's you this morning, would you raise your hand? Thank you. Thank you. I shared with you that this is my spiritual birthday, and I'm 41 in Jesus today. And before my surrender to Christ, I lived stupid. I made very poor choices. And there is no way that I should be alive on the planet today. I abused my body with drugs and alcohol. And it's only by His grace that I am alive today. If that day would not have been my day of surrender, there is no way I would be here this day. Maybe you're in the house today and you say, Kathy, I cannot be the example I need to be because Jesus is not Lord of my life. Every year when I preach this message, I ask this question: could this be the day that you would share my spiritual birthday and that you would surrender your life to Christ? So many of us try on our own. You can't do it on your own. It will never happen. But if you're here this morning and you say, yes, I want to surrender to Christ. I want to share this spiritual birthday with you. I want to make Him Lord of my life. Would you raise your hand, please? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Last Mother's Day was a great day. Today I want to tell you something. I want to be standing here if Jesus tarries His coming and tell a victorious story about you. All of you that have walked this altar, I want to tell a victorious story, a life-changing, radical story about you. Last Mother's Day, Jay Crow had one of those. Jay had been in a backslidden condition for a time. And last Mother's Day, he surrendered his heart back to the Lord. And this past year, I have watched him as steady as he's ever been. Just all the ups and downs are over. He has just been solid and steady. And last Mother's Day, you didn't know this, but my wife had spent time with their daughter, Janae. Cecilia, sir, good to see you, Cecilia. We've been praying for her. Let her know you love her and appreciate her. You did not know. Often things happen behind the scenes we can't tell you, but with permission, I'll tell you this behind-the-scenes story, briefly. Janae was pregnant and had her mind made up to abort that baby. And Kathy met with her, we met with her, and today they have a beautiful granddaughter in the name of Jesus. Hallelujah. And a couple of weeks ago, she was here with that precious baby, and I put my arm around her and said, Janae, aren't you glad? Aren't you glad you made the choice that you made? She says, I am. I'm so glad.